welcome to Audio Diaries. I'm Ralph van Dijk, founding creative director of audio specialist agency Eardrum. Now, what's the first thing that comes to mind when you hear this song?
It must be love, love, love.
Okay, if you're thinking nappies, you've made my next guest really happy. Rahul Asthana is the Senior Marketing Director at Kimberly-Clark Australia and New Zealand. He's responsible for brands like Kleenex, You by Kotex, and of course, Huggies, the brand that's been using that track in its advertising for the last 30 years. I spoke to him about the role music, voice commerce, and audio in general is playing in building brands at Kimberly-Clark. Which country did that come out of? Was it an Australian?
It was an Australian initiative.
Yeah.
And actually, we use it largely in Australia. It's not used globally.
Okay. At that time, the song would have been pretty much at its height.
That's correct.
So that can't have been cheap.
You know, I would say yes, it wasn't, but I would say totally worth it. It's just a universal message. It's a timeless message, and it's still relevant today.
Yeah.
And the way we've kept it fresh is we've refreshed the tune, the beats, and, just kept it modern. And also, as we've expanded the brand portfolio and we've got different tiers in the brand, we've used it differently for different parts of the portfolio.
Do you think that a new composition that was written specifically to have the same sentiment of love and that universal feeling, do you think that that would have been as effective 30 years on?
It's a great question, and I think there's no right answer to it. I would say that given where we are, which is, we've got a great association with this for a long period of time, the bar for any new piece of music or any new composition just becomes that much higher. I think part of it will then just become, a question that we need to keep asking ourselves, which we do every year when the contract comes up for renewal, on whether we still think that this is the right association for the brand and it's still communicating what we need to.
Yeah. Do you find that it's getting harder for brands to have that consistency over a period of time, or do you feel that it's more important than it has been?
And I think the answer to both is yes. It's become more difficult. And I think it's increasingly more important, to just anchor yourself in some consistent, executional equities that consumers can associate with the brand. In a time where there's so much proliferation of brand choices, and at a time where the power is completely in the hands of the consumer to choose how they want to engage with the brand, those consistent equities actually help drive the familiarity because of which a consumer may want to, listen to your message for a little bit longer, which I just think is, invaluable in today's time.
What are some of the challenges in remaining consistent? From your perspective?
The biggest challenge, I would say, are marketers and agency people thinking that, it's getting old and we need to do something different. I would say that we have an advantage on Huggies because we get a fresh target audience every 3 years, right?
True.
As babies grow out of nappies, you get a new mom. But I would say primarily it would be more internal, right? New marketers and new agencies, wanting to leave their mark on the brand.
Yeah. You mentioned innovation earlier. A nappy brand isn't really the first thing you think of when you think of voice commerce, but earlier this year you launched a set of audio activities that were accessible via Amazon Alexa. We'll have a listen to that, and then perhaps if you could talk us through how it works.
Sure.
Sometimes you just need a helping hand. Huggies is now on Alexa with fun and interactive songs and activities for your family.
Alexa, ask Huggies to play Active Time for Lucy.
Okay, Lucy. Ready, steady, let's play Active Time.
So we had 3 or 4 different options depending upon the age of your baby. It was there to soothe the baby when, if the baby was cranky, help the baby to fall asleep, help entertain the baby. And it really worked because it was hands-free, right? So parents could do other things and they could activate just via voice.
Yeah.
And Kimberly-Clark, we strongly believe that voice is the future. As consumers have evolved from text or, websites to video.
Did you use the "it must be love" mnemonic within the skill?
If I think back, I don't think so. And I think, for us, we were running towards creating a minimum viable product, that we can get out there.
We did a campaign with Choosy, which is a insurance comparison site. And we had Alexa performing the mnemonic. And I can just imagine how she'd approach It Must Be Love.
There are a couple of other things that we're looking at, which is interesting because we're doing a podcast, but we're looking at a podcast on Huggies, which is a different way of bringing to life that we know, content that we know the consumer values, because we know that close to 1 million of them visit our website every month, to consume that content. But increasingly, we want to present that content in a way which is more relevant to millennial moms or Gen Z moms as we are now starting to speak to them. So we felt that podcasts would be a really interesting way of bringing that content to life.
Now, we get asked to make a lot of branded podcasts. I'd say we turn down half of the requests because the world doesn't need another podcast about tyres or teeth whitening or whatever it is. But there's ways of finding the category or finding the world that brand exists in and making something that will be popular, because, you're up against 750,000 other podcasts now.
Yep.
And no one's forcing that content on a consumer, on a listener. They decide, they vote with their ears, and they can make that decision within 30 seconds.
100%.
So to find something that is relevant and that value exchange, like you said, is so critically important. Are there other brands within Kimberly-Clark that are also exploring this new area?
Yeah, absolutely. So, another brand that's worth talking about in Kimberly-Clark is You by Kotex, which is the market leader in feminine hygiene. And music has always played a big role. And that's simply because the consumer that we're talking to, for them, music is a really important part of who they are. And it's a really important part of how they express themselves. So, there are two things that, I'd like to talk about on You by Kotex. The first one is we're now in the third year of a brand campaign, which is called Period or Not, She Can.
Okay, let's just have a listen to a little bit of that. Right.
We've chosen this track, very intentionally. It's called Bold, and I think it brings to life again what we want to say from You by Kotex to the consumer. It's chosen deliberately, where it's about the group, about girls, not just one girl with a single voice. It's about a group of girls. The other example, again, on You by Kotex is, and this was more fun and lighthearted. On Spotify, we did something called a period playlist.
Oh yeah.
Which has a collection of songs which we don't presume to tell girls will help them get through their period better. And it was just a fun and lighthearted take on something that could become quite difficult for girls.
That's great. I mean, and to have that really direct tone of voice is just disarming and very contemporary, very much in touch with that generation's and their attitude toward this subject.
That's right.
Have you noticed any other, have you got your eye on, or your ear on any other platforms that you're going to explore?
Definitely on You by Kotex, we're exploring other platforms. So TikTok, for example, that combines, obviously music has an important role to play for the videos that people make there. As I mentioned earlier, voice search is something that we're really, kind of interested in understanding how that evolves and really keeping pace with that. But, for us, it's a really simple principle, which is, we got to be where our consumers are.
Do you have any advice for other marketers in your position, which, specifically relating to audio and the use of sound?
I think it's something you touched upon earlier, which is once you've found something that's really working, however tempting it might be to go and explore something different and something new, we found and we've shown, I think on Huggies at least, that sound can have legs and it can go on for much longer than, what we've seen. So I would say resisting that temptation and really being guided by one thing, which is, does it still continue to be relevant for your consumer? And if the answer is yes, then, just continue to stay with it.
Rahul, thanks very much for your insights.
Thank you, Ralph.
And you can hear more audio diaries right here. If you'd like help exploring how your brand could reach the ever-expanding audiences who are navigating the world through their ears, get in touch with us at Eardrum. You can email us at info@eardrum.com.au. Thanks for listening.